it is a youth forum, so we have to hear from the youth voice. And at this time, I'll be introducing our panelists for our brief panel discussion this morning. And panelists, as I call your name, you can join me on stage. And team, I'm going to need one more chair for another panelist. So I'll start with Dawik Gandra, student from All-American Institute of Medical Sciences. A round of applause for him. He's joined by Colin Powell, a student at Bethlehem Moravian College. Paul Brown, student at University of the Commonwealth Caribbean. Daniel Dodd, student from the Jamaica Theological Seminar. And of course, Leanna Miller, student representing the Caribbean School of Medical Sciences, Jamaica. All right, so while we have our panelists situated, I have another question for the audience. And these you don't have to raise your hand if you don't want to. But of course, I just want to get a feel of, or rather to get your minds thinking as to what it is that we'll be discussing today. So if another major disruption was to occur, whether a pandemic, hurricane, how confident are we that our current systems would protect the quality of education? Can think about that number out of 1 to 10. What does quality in higher education truly mean to you today? Can think about that as well. And do you believe our quality assurance frameworks are flexible enough to encourage innovation in the education system? All right, you may be seated, my panelists. Thank you. I don't want to block the stars of the day. All right, so students, of course, we have you here today to really give us your perspective. So I want you to be as open and honest as possible, because your voices and your input will be what will help us to drive change in quality and higher education. So briefly, each of you, I'd love for each of you to just share with me what your experience has been like, even starting as far back as the pandemic and then the recent experience with Hurricane Melissa. How did you feel like your experience with education and schooling really changed? And I'll start with Dawik.
So my education, it started after the pandemic. I came over to Jamaica and I started my medicine from All-American Institute of Medical Sciences. I'm currently in my second year. So after Hurricane Melissa, I didn't know how it would go. I didn't know what would happen. I was very confused. I'm not too sure what would happen, but it was resolved and everything's fine now. So that's all I can say for now, and I'll explain it more in the further questions. Thank you.
For me in high school, I was in 11th grade when the pandemic came, and as you know, 11th graders, they're expected to be completing SBA and preparing for CSEC. There was quite a bit of uncertainty into where I'll be going and understanding how I will be completing my SBAs, my classes for preparing for CSEC. Now, when the pandemic came and we were out of school and we were home and all of that, and it was a few months outside of the classroom before the school administration decided to say that we're going to have a mixed method learning, to have some persons home and some persons within the physical space through a rotational basis. So some of us would come for Monday, Tuesday, another batch would come Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday would be completely online. Now, the few months out, I can say that impacted my grades in passing CSEC, because I believe that I would have done much better even though I attained the required CSECs for going into college. I thought that I would have done much better if there was a fail-safe system already in place, that when the pandemic hit, we wouldn't have a problem where we're not sure how to have students back in the learning space, or what other alternatives we can provide for that academic learning to continue. Um, Post Melissa now, while in college, um, there was a month of uncertainty into what would happen for learning. So, but at the same time, the system was in place to be compassionate towards the students. So the schools were, the college and a whole, the college administration and the student body was in a reaction mood to try and get all students accounted for. Learning was put on pause. And that was understandable because you cannot have learning continuing and you're not accounting for all your students. So that was what was happening for us. When we got back, it was quite easy because lecturers set a system in place. And I don't want to speak too long for now. The lecturers put a system in place to provide us all the required necessary information preparing us for exams. And it was quite compassionate on behalf of the TCJ and the college administration to push for where we have exams being deferred to January of this year. And that was quite important because many of the students, they lost everything. They lost their homes, they lost their resources. Some students even lost their uniform. So being back at school was not possible for them.
When the pandemic happened, I was in high school. And at that time, I felt like the experience of being face-to-face was stolen from me because now I'm online, I don't really see any of my friends, I don't really get to meet anybody new, and we are just caged in our houses, and some days it's so depressing and you don't have anybody really to speak to. You're just moving from your bedroom to your living room to the veranda and you're afraid to go on the outside because something out there to get us. But even though our students on the West and their students was affected, we didn't cancel how we operate as an institution. We rather look into the well-being of the students. And this take many forms of we pushing for project-based instead of in-person exams. So wherever you consider home during that period, we at UCC push past the fact that, yes, we have face-to-face exams, but we're looking at the well-being of the students and going for project-based, allowing a lot of students to actually fulfill the semester. And even though we thought that that was it, we took it a little bit further. Some students might have thought that mentally, I'm not able to complete this semester. We gave them the option of resitting all those courses the following semester at no cost to them. So I felt like we were more prepared after passing through the pandemic and understanding what it means to cater for our student body in general.
Good morning, everyone. I was in fourth form, grade 10, when the pandemic hit, and of course, everyone has said before, it felt like our face-to-face sessions were stolen from us, but I found that I had teachers that were passionate about teaching just as much as they were when they were face-to-face, when online. So to be honest, I did my best to match their energy because I could see their efforts. And as someone said, you move from your bedroom to your living room. Sometimes you stay in your bedroom. But I did my best, and I always encouraged my classmates to do the same. We're at school, and whenever we have issues, that's what we have our teachers for. And they were readily prepared for us, and I'm grateful for that. As for Melissa, my side of the country was not affected as much. The most I was affected by was just loss of electricity. But unfortunately, we have students on the West, and they were badly affected. So whether it was Montego Bay or Black River, they lost their homes or they sustained severe damages. And some of them also lost their uniforms, as someone said a while ago. So that was very difficult. But as for me, I did not sustain that much. Thank you.
Morning, everybody. Blessings. Right. So, yes, Daniel Dodd here. For me, quick and short, I attended my institution post-COVID. In fact, it was a culture shock for me. Of course, attending school prior, you're used to this face-to-face thing, and now you're coming to this place where you feel like, say, you're seeing people over the screen, right? Indeed, if I may say, if I'm going to be honest, I enjoyed it, right? The fact that you can be in your bedroom or your living room and you cock up your foot and, you know what I mean? If we're being truthful, right? But coming to Melissa, of course, knowing that our institution is online totally, right? The effects were not as drastic. Of course, you would have people who are situated in certain areas of the island who were badly affected. And of course, we'll probably talk about that later on. But as for where I am located, I wasn't so drastically affected. So, so far the experience for me has been good and has been comfortable. In Jesus' name, amen.
All right, thank you so much. All right, so we've heard the opening statements from our panelists, and coming out of that, we've heard various perspectives. We've heard about the compassion that the institutions rather showed to their students. We learned about, of course, the different initiatives put in place for deferrals and online learning that was used to help to curb the effects and impacts of the shock. So the shock, of course, as mentioned, would have been the pandemic, which we are still recovering from in some instances, and then recently being hit by, even to go a year back from Beryl, and then coming back to Melissa, we are hit by several shocks. And fortunately and unfortunately, it's the nature of where we are situated in Jamaica, in the Caribbean, as a tropical nation. Now, moving along to recovery. So we've gone through the shock, and here we are now a few months later. What does recovery look like? What are some of the things that you know are exposed to at school that you feel has helped to improve your situation? So whether it's online learning, whether it's mentorship sessions, what are some of those ideas and initiatives that your schools are now implementing? I'll actually start with Colin this time.
Okay, so post Melissa, as I said, most of our students were out for a month. And bringing back everyone on campus was a bit of a logistics issue, and also whether or not the students on our dorms would cooperate in allowing external off-campus students to be on our campus. So what we did was we sat with the administration. I am currently the third year coordinator at my college. And what we did was we sat with the college administration and we said to them that, can it be a case where we allow the students that are homeless and they have no place to be, so whether they have no family member to stay with, can we take them in on the dorms? Now we have a dorm fee that must be paid. But what we were asking is that if it's at least a few months until these students were back on their feet, that they could stay on the dorm. The college agreed with that. That was a part of the whole recovery process. The college agreed. Now, would the students be in agreement? The ones that pay their dorm fee and are on the dorm, would they be in agreement? And thankfully, thanks be to God, they all cooperated. So when we brought it to the student body, they all cooperated and they said yes, it would be okay. So some of the dorms, we have 2 persons per dorm. Some went as far enough to say that a third is acceptable. So we have 3 persons and some rooms on the dorms. We have 3 dorms, 2 for the males and 2 for female. 4 dorms, but 3 larger ones. 2 for males, 2 for females. And they allow the students outside to come on campus. And next part of the recovery was that, and even though it may be just for a short period of time, that assistance was provided, they allowed the college bus to transit from the main town closest to us, Santa Cruz, to campus. So what they did, they made it free for students who were traveling to come to campus using that service. And it will be operating in the morning and in the afternoon. Another service that was provided as well was a Starlink. We turned the student lobby into the hub for learning. So whether you need to complete courseworks, whether you need to have an online class, that space was made available for that. Also, because there was no electricity across campuses, we had to set a schedule for that student lobby where we had teachers or lecturers assigned to that area for a particular coursework presentation. So when students have to present, let's say, a seminar or something, and it requires technology as a part of the coursework, they will be using that space. Another part of the recovery too as well was that we understand that students would be faced with financial trouble to really be on campus every day. So what we did was we say that, okay, once you are getting the content, you do not need to be at school every day. So that what the administration did. So students had the option to decide how many days per week it was viable for them to be on campus. We also said to them that if it's a case that you're not able to afford lunches, we would provide that lunch free of cost to you. And that's what we did. So that was a part of the whole recovery process. We also, on the guild side, the student body side, we also made flyers from the get-go. We pushed out for assistance. We asked for funding, we asked for generators, and we did get that assistance. Some generators, we had them across the campus, operating the printery, operating the administrative center, so that communication could get back on track. So after burial, the college had put in place some systems where if there's no electricity, a generator would function the administrative center. However, Melissa damaged that generator. So the college was out and lacking communication for a period, for a week. However, it is good when you have strong student leaders in a college. And our student body was strong enough to be proactive and reach out to the students. So we created Google Forms. We tried to reach as much persons as possible and say, if you know someone that is a Bethlehem student and you live close to them, please check on them and get back to us. So whoever we could reach out to. So in some rural areas in Westmoreland, deep rural, where it's off the main road, we ask persons, if you have a drive, please go and check on this individual. And that's what we did. So thankfully, no member of staff and no student died from Melissa. However, at the same time, some students did lose family members. And the college, in a part of its recovery process, we made the chaplain of the college, because we're a church institution, a Moravian institution. We made the chaplain available, the guidance counselor available, and few lecturers available for counseling. So while you're at school, you're able to go into one-on-one sessions with these individuals and share what you're going through, so that you can be as best prepared for classes and all of that. So you're not mentally drained by the experiences that you have been through. So that's a whole part of the aspect of recovery. For now, we got back full electricity in February, and majority of the students, even though they have lost a lot, most of them, thanks be to God, are feeling much more comfortable being back at college. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
When the hurricane happened, we designed an initiative called Journey to the Finish, which was really important to the student body here at UCC. It's developed by students, led by students, and the entire faculty supported us. Now, this initiative didn't just cater to the physical aspect of the damage that happened, but also we cater to the well-being of the mental aspect of the students, which was really important as well, because somebody can physically be okay, but mentally they are not there. And we made available, the first thing that we did was to make available counselors so that our students could speak to them. And our second thing that we did was to ensure that care package reached all our students that were affected on the west side of the island. A major part of this was we had campus-wide access. And somebody might say, but Kingston people didn't get affected, but if you wanted to come to campus to charge a device, there was always a campus there for you to come to. Now, those on the west side, what they got was a campus to come to. We provided generator, we provided Starlink, we provided refreshments on campus that you might not have something to eat, but when you get to campus, you can ensure that something is there to be provided for you. And this gives the students some sort of ease in their mind that I have a safe zone that I can gather, charge my device, and just recharge mentally as well, because we had different activities happening on those campuses. Moving from that aspect, we gave the students the option of resitting those courses that they felt like, I'm gonna fail this course, so I'm gonna back out. Instead of backing out, we gave them the option to resit all those courses to no cost to them the semester following. Another important, another aspect of Journey to the Finish was that we didn't just create a stronger bond, but even up to today, we have a peer counseling session where students can go to breathe, to release themselves, to understand, and to just speak whatever they are feeling on the inside. They can find that room and find somebody to speak with, and that was basically our recovery process here at UCC.
Fabulous. Thank you. Another proactive student body and institution, the University of the Commonwealth Caribbean. All right, we go now to Liana for your perspective.
The institution as well as the student guild, I can remember clearly where they both reached out to the students in the affected area. Our registrar, Miss Daniela Hyde, she called the students individually and asked how they were and what the school could have done to improve their situation. I also remember members of our guild, they would personally contact the students. And from that, whatever information we got, we relayed it to Ms. Hyde. For example, we heard that one of our students, her father, needed medication as he was a diabetic and he was hypertensive. However, he was living in Black River at the time. And he, like many others, they did not want to leave down there immediately. And so we understood that. And with that information, Ms. Hyde relayed that to Dr. Neva Graham, our founder. And he was able to provide medication for her father free of cost. And from that instance, they were proactive and realized that this will need to be consistent. We'll need to be more consistent with this. And what CSMSJ did, along with other key partners, they created a mobile intervention clinic. And with that, they were able to continuously provide for our students as well as for other members in the Western parishes. So far, we have been to Westmoreland and Trelawney and other areas in St. Elizabeth. And there they offer, they do their best to offer dentist care and ophthalmology and to provide medication, so they have their own personal pharmacy. And also what the guild did, they pushed out a tag drive. We created our list of things and we encouraged students at CSMSJ as well as other institutions to come and deliver anything that they could have, whether it's from clothes or canned products. And that way we delivered it to students personally to St. Elizabeth. Thank you.
Thank you. Liana, with their mobile clinic. We go to Daniel next.
All right, yes. So, as it relates to JTS is such a tight, knitted community. Not because of its numbers, but the genuine care to which the students and along with staff have for each other. We look out for each other dearly. And of course, as I would have said before, most of our classes, well, all of our classes, in fact, is online. For what I do know is that, of course, majority of our students are from the West who have been affected by this. For those, you have some people who lose them home, some lose their internet access, as would have said by other panelists. But we have created such a strong communication. Okay. We have created such a strong communication medium whereby persons can be able to be informed about various resources to which the school can be able to provide, right? It has been such a knitted communication to the point where students themselves would have offered their place for persons to abode, for persons to stay. And that of itself is heartwarming. The communication has improved. We have changed platforms in how persons can be able to voice their concerns. We have also done the same with the Google form links and all of those stuff for persons to tell us what is it that they're going through. And so the communication aspect has been better since COVID. Well, what much can I say? For us, we have just been a brother's keeper. We have definitely been a brother's keeper. That's all I have to say for now.
Thank you. Yes, yes. Give it up for Daniel. And we round off that question with Dywick.
Before the hurricane, we didn't know which direction the hurricane would come from because it was changing direction each day. And then it ended off on the last day, we realized it was going to be impact on our side. So at that time, we had to evacuate the university. And during the time of evacuation, obviously, we didn't know where to go because most of our students are international students and they're Jamaican students as well. So at that time, our president and the student guild made sure everyone had a home to go to and everyone was accommodated in a safe place. And post-hurricane now, the university was flattened, so we didn't have anything left. That time we were unsure if anything would go on, if the education would continue again. We weren't too sure. So, and then during that time, our president reached out to each one of us, made sure and told us that the university would be continuing and running. So initially we took some time off because communications were down and we didn't have communication to reach out to every student. But in the meantime, our president and the student guild were trying to reach each student through either emails, WhatsApp numbers, even if they know where they live, go check, so which was really nice of them. And my executive dean at that time, I was really unsure about what to do, and she personally emailed me asking me how I'm doing. She personally emailed each student asking how they're doing, which was really reassuring, especially when your dean is asking you how you're doing. I felt like, even though it's just a bit of words, it just felt really reassuring at that time. And from that time, obviously everything was flattened, we didn't have dorms, so we couldn't go back to campus time. So the president actually found us free of cost living resorts, and they gave us a place to stay at that time, to multiple students. And after the hurricane and where we're living, we lived outside in some resorts for a while, and that was cost-free, taken care of. The president took care of it. And then we reverted to online learning for about a month. And during online learning, of course, it was very unprepared. We weren't ready for all that. And so a lot of students had internet issues and communication was down most of the times. So it was really hard. But what the university made sure was, even though if students missed a lecture, there would always be a recording. And at that time, the exams were delayed. So no one missed out on anything. And there was always catch-up classes, free of cost as well, which was really nice. And we just recently started again we opened a branch in Mandeville, which is our new campus now. And we're heading towards normalcy slowly.
Thank you so much, Derek, there from All-American Institute of Medical Sciences. So we've heard quite a few perspectives and quite a few initiatives that the institutions put in place. But I think what's most commendable is the role of the students in their advocacy on behalf of their fellow students. So I think that is also commendable and deserves another round of applause. Our student leadership is very active. So we're rounding out the discussion now, but I have two questions for you. The first one, and everyone can just give me a brief response, one sentence, no more than two. But what does quality mean to you, especially now in this kind of changed environment post-Melissa? So this time I'll start with with Daniel.
All right.
Yes.
All right, so what does quality mean? For me, it means being able to stand after crisis. It's what the institution in this case can be able to deliver despite its strength. You said two sentences. All right. Yeah. So the standing for that institution in the eyes of crisis, for what they can deliver, and for that institution to always put the students first. That's pretty much it.
Thank you. Liana?
For me, what quality education means is it involves patience across the board, from the administrative staff, from the teachers, as well as the students. As we know, we have other students who have been affected, and affected in different ways, not just physically, but mentally as well. And it's a change for everybody. And it's important for each person of this family, of this school, to be patient with the other, because as students of our school will say, no man is an island. And it's not one degree. Each person can get their own degree, and we cannot afford to leave anybody behind. So I would believe that not only the notes and ensuring that we actually pass exams, it's also about checking up on each other and just making sure that we're all okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Liana. All right, we go to Paul.
Quality to me is remaining calm and compassionate, and remembering that at all given time, it's not about you alone, but about teamwork and bringing forth everybody to the end of the journey.
Thank you. All right, we go to Colin.
Quality to me is about not making quick and irrational decisions in the heights of crisis. While the situation demands a response that is adequate into alleviating the problems of this crisis, we must always ensure that the decisions we make, they're not too quick and they are practical. And also, quality to me means that the communication that any administration or anybody is releasing, that is on the same page as everybody else. Because in times of crisis, you don't want confusion. So that's what quality is to me.
Nice, thank you so much. Colin, and we go to Daiwick next.
Hello. Quality to me is ensuring each student is accounted for and is getting the best that they could possibly get from learning. That's what it means to me.
All right, thank you so much. And the final question now is, again, for students to tell us, what advice would you give to your institutions that would improve the quality of learning for students? So what advice would you give to your institutions, and they're listening, that you would use to improve the experience for students, and be as open as possible, you know, because your advice is what will bring about those changes. So this time I will start with Liana.
Okay, the advice that I would give to my institution is that, as you mentioned before, that our location, we're in the Caribbean, we are prone to hurricanes every year. And we know that it starts somewhere in June 1st. And what I would advise is that we be more proactive, be more prepared. If we can start certain drives from before, our response can be more prompt, and students would have more support, immediate support. So if we can start to collect things, no matter what, or clothes, even notebooks, bags, anything, that I think that would improve our response. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so Daiwick, I'm coming to you.
Okay. The advice I would give is probably have the main team, the president and the dean and everyone working with the student body to go through the time of crisis. When you're going through the time of crisis, include the student body as well for what they have to say and what advice they would give as well. Because sometimes the communication I felt it was a bit off, and both sides didn't really understand what was happening, whereas if you included the student body, I'd feel like you would see more from a student's perspective and you would understand what would be happening. And I would also say pre-planning more next time, so just be more planned, and yeah.
All right, thank you. All right, so we come back to Daniel.
Yes, guys. So though our communication is up to par at the moment, and of course there's always room for improvement. I believe, of course, definitely our admin can provide more resources, source sponsors to help fund or give resources to people who are affected when it comes on to things like this. I think there is, of course, always room for improvement. As I said, our communication is great, our proactiveness is great, right? However, sometimes you just need that extra hand in arms giving. And I think that's the need for us, especially for those who are within the West.
All
Thank you.
right, fabulous. Thank you so much, Daniel. We go to Paul now.
So my advice is don't just listen to your students in the time of crisis only. And I think all of us can agree on that. That don't just take our information when you need them in the crisis, but remember after the crisis that we still remain as students. And I think that is something that we need to involve our students more in leadership, not just during the time of crisis when you need a representative or somebody to stand up to the call, but ensure that the decisions that are being made moving forward, that they have students there, not just as placeholders, but as real advocates that they can say, this is not what we stand for as a student body, and we are here for the students. No, not saying anybody is corrupted, but when you get there, don't just stand there and accept everything. There must be a fight and there must be a tug sometime, but we're going to come to a decision because students must be heard. That's my advice.
I love that. Thank you so much, Paul. And of course, rounding out the discussion, Colin, with your perspective.
So my advice to my institution, and it runs along the same pattern of the advice that the other panelists would have given to their institution, is that never keep students out of the decision making in an institution. To have a strong institution, you must always listen to your student body. Student body is critical in whatever is happening in an institution. They are the clients of, they're your customers. And if your customers are unhappy or your customers are out of giving a review on the product, then it doesn't make sense you're selling. So you must always involve student input. That's my advice.
Wonderful. Thank you so much to all our panelists, Dawik Gandra, students at All-American Institute of Medical Sciences, Colin Powell, students at Bethlehem Moravian College. You mentioned that he's the third-year coordinator. We have Paul Brown, a student here at the University of the Commonwealth Caribbean, Daniel Dodd from Jamaica Theological Seminary, and Leanna Miller, student at the Caribbean School of Medical Sciences. So at this time, I open the floor for 2 questions. So anyone in the audience have any questions for our panelists?
Hi, hello. So it was touched on, but I want to ask a question to Colin. But anyone can feel free to answer afterwards. So many disaster recovery strategy was focused on, but it was talked about in a short-term relief stage. What long-term strategic change can be done for educational institution to make changes for students to gain like lost opportunities or academic growth and development?
Okay, so thank you for that question. So based on what your question is asking, other than the whole providing of Starlink service and all of that, what else can be done? So for me, preparing for crises is important, but we are never truly prepared. The crisis can take many different forms. It can take a pandemic, a hurricane, or earthquake. Sometimes when we do put in a system in place for, let's say, a hurricane, we've been through 3 and we've been through a pandemic. We have learned and we have gained experiences from these. Now, being through that and providing the short-term recovery, what can be done in the long term? My advice to that question is that the institutions or educational institution must always have some funds set aside for long-term recovery. So it cannot be that when you have a storm, you say, okay, we're going to buy some generators. We must stockpile on certain resources that an institution need. So even after the storm, it was a bit reactive in nature to say that a storm comes, you have no electricity, and now you're hunting for generators. That's too short term. You need to be stockpiling on resources. You need to be having a system in place to say that if there's no communication coming from the college, which other alternative can we use to provide that communication? Is it that we're going to have the student body take over that until the administration gets back electricity? Or is it that we're going to have students in a matter where if there's no electricity, is it that we're going to have them pause learning? Is it that we're going to defer exam? So a lot of these decisions are made during the height of the crisis. Just like after Melissa, the TCJ and the college, they met and they decided to defer exam. These are things that will happen after the crisis. And I don't think we can be truly prepared for whatever crisis we may face. We are unsure what the next crisis will be. We have put a system in place for hurricanes, for a pandemic, but what other system can we put in place for the next crisis? It can take a different form. AI is now in place. We see AI is used in wars. AI is used to attack other countries' cyberspace. What if it's a case where the crisis is not physical, where our education institutions are attacked by a foreign entity or a foreign AI system? How do we react to that? So I don't think we can be truly prepared, but it's a good question that you asked, what else can be done in the long term? But overall, all in all, I think that it's important that these institutions put in place the necessary funding set aside and the necessary pre-planning for, let's say, hurricanes and earthquakes, because we know that these things are a yearly stuff. So we know that a hurricane is coming. We don't know which day and which time, but we know that a hurricane is likely to come. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Colin. And thank you for that question as well.
Good morning, everyone. Duhini Million Money College. Question for all the panelists. What do you believe is the role of student leadership in maintaining quality in your institution, and how has your student body or guild demonstrated that thus far?
All right, so that's an important question. Now, the institution is for the students, and that's one thing we must understand. It's the students have, of course, a responsibility to ensure that for what the institution needs to provide, those requirements are being met. The student has the responsibility to learn the rules and laws that governs that. As a student body, right, we're here to represent that, right? Wherever there is complacency, where administration is lackadaisical, we have a duty to reinforce the requirements that is to be provided by that institution, right? So even if you have to depend them back clock, right? You as a student, you must be firm and strong to say, okay, I am here to learn, I am here to be given whatever provision that's needed to be given by this institution. Where is it? Where is it? And even if it is that administration may not want to see your face, because for us as JTS, for all JTS students, and especially the student council, sometimes we have to be a little rigid with admin. And so, to see the changes that we need to see. And I think that's very important. You as a student must know what you are there for, and ensure that whatever you are there for, you are getting what it is required for, for your education, for your quality education. I'll leave that for now.
I'd like to hear from Paul as well.
Yeah.
So, as I rightfully said before, when you are in a leadership role as a student leader, there is going to be a time that is not everything we're going to accept. And this has been proven by our Student Council Guild that in the time of the crisis, we met, well, our Student Council president would have met with the team, and we understood the assignment that, hey, we are okay, but our students on the West aren't. And the thing is, the school was giving us their opinion, but we were giving our opinion too. And to ensure that higher education is always maintained, or quality in higher education is maintained, is not everything that we're gonna be okay with. So some days we're gonna say, well, how are we going to tell students who are affected by a hurricane to come out of their house to come and do an exam that they're not mentally prepared to do, that they're not in the space to do, and they're not even having a house to live in? And we come to the decision of having project-based assessment. Now, this was a plus for everybody, but we didn't just stop there. We ensured that, okay, the students are okay, but we extended the deadlines, and we thank God for our lecturers. We spoke to our lecturers, because even though the students were saying to us at some point, they made complaints that, okay, some of our lecturers aren't being so calm with us. We as student leaders, I had some classes and I had to put my classes on hold, go into those classes and speak to those lecturers and let them know that our students are too important, and even though they are not affected in the physical space, that you are to take your time with them. So student leadership isn't about always being good and dandy and shandy. Some days you have to be rugged, some days you have to be rough, and some days you have to put down your foot to ensure that the students are pleased.
Thank you. Wow, great perspectives there from Paul and Daniel. So coming out of the discussion, we understand that quality in higher education, it really goes just beyond preparing for the exams, delivering lectures, and awarding degrees. The students, the youth, they want more. They want to ensure that you're listening, you're putting in proactive solutions to prepare for what could happen and what has happened, learning from those experiences as well. So again, we've heard from the students. Thank you so much, students, for all your perspectives. And you may go back to your seats to listen to the rest of the discussion. Yes, and I know our institutions listening, or administrators listening, are taking notes. I hope you've heard from the students, the different ideas as well coming from our other representatives on the panel. So another thing that came up during the discussion was about the climate. So we know that Jamaica is in the tropical space. We are prone to many natural disasters, and that understanding helps us to build a certain level of resiliency and, of course, prepare for sustainability beyond the crises. So based on our discussion today, from shock to stability, we want to give you a little perspective. So I'm going to invite now Mrs. Lenika Scott, our environmental and policy specialist, just to give us a climate roundup so that we can really understand what we are working with and where we are situated and how that makes our situation in the education space unique. So please, a round of applause for her.
Hi everyone, I will just say, don't have your hopes up too high, because just like the students, the school administrators, and the government, nobody could have anticipated the devastation that we experienced during Hurricane Melissa. I have been a practitioner in this space for a while, and I will say this to you, that we have been, as climate scientists, we have been writing and in reports that, yes, Jamaica is located in the Atlantic belt and we are prone to hurricanes, and certainly we expect that Jamaica will experience a hurricane, a Category 5 hurricane, but when it came, yeah. So I want for us to firstly give grace to the school administrators and commend the students for being able to pivot in such a way that they were able to rise to the occasion and lead with dignity. You came together and you collaborated well under certain pressures. So unfortunately, temperatures are rising, This summer is predicted to hit a new record. Now, for me, I don't like the heat, and I know that a lot of Jamaicans, we can't bother with the sun hot. But we have to brace for drought, as Minister Samoda would have said. Can students learn in the heat is one of the questions I want to ask to you. Can you learn if the place is too hot? Do we need to switch from having summer to Christmas schools? What do you think about that idea? No? Okay. So I visited Suriname recently, and their work hours are actually 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. So one of the reasons why Suriname instituted this arrangement is because if you know where Suriname is located, anybody knows? Yeah? It's to the south, but what is the key geographical factor that determines their climate? The equator. So Suriname has a very humid, very hot climate, right? And so because it gets very hot during the midday, they've decided to end their workday at 3 p.m. Now I say this to you because when you're thinking about how can we solve or pivot, you have to think about the different changes that can easily be implemented to boost productivity and learning. So I have a question for you. I'm going to read 3 statements, and you're going to tell me if you agree with statement A, statement B, or statement C. So statement A reads, climate change is more important than every other sector. Statement B is, climate change impacts all sectors, and you cannot plan without understanding the changing realities. Statement C, the sectors have their own needs and importance. Which statement do you agree with? Is it A, B, or C? It's B. So the fact is, as we would have started out today, we looked at resilience. Resilience in education is we must build our system in such a way that if we have a hurricane, we can bounce back quicker than the 3 months that it would have taken some of the institutions to reach out to their students, or the 12 months that it's taken some of the schools to rebuild. Stability. Stability in the sense that we are maintaining consistency, the feel of it in terms of the experience that the students are getting is not much different from what they're used to. It is still maintaining the quality of the education that they're experiencing. Sustainability. Will it work only for 1 year? Or is it something that we're able to fund for 2 years and beyond? Will teachers be able to, and are they equipped to implement it? So these are the questions that we have to ask if we're going to integrate climate resilience into education. Now, the students would have highlighted their experience right after the pandemic, and they would have noted that slow responses and the lack of communication was really what would have hindered their experience. The education system has never been stress tested, and in building climate resilience, this is something that I'm going to charge the students to try to implement. It's going to be very difficult. I'll be very honest with you. I was so prepared to come and talk to you about the science behind climate change. But when I sat down and I listened to the panel, I realized that your experiences and everything that really happened to the education sector, it is real. You're talking about institutions, multi-layered institutions that have within them systems that include teachers, students, different stakeholders that are impacted in different ways. Then you're talking about looking at Jamaica as a whole, and one section of the island completely devastated, the other section kinda all right. School can probably resume, but then you have students with families in Westmoreland, St. James, and other parts of the country. And some of them even went home during the hurricane. I'm pretty sure that even though your school is located in Kingston, some of you were not able to reach out or to get through to your peers, right? So you spoke about communication, but let us be real. Could the institution predict that people in St. James, you wouldn't be able to WhatsApp them or call them on the phone? It was difficult for people to drive down to St. Elizabeth because of the trees falling on the ground and other kinds of extreminalities. Jamaica is located in the Caribbean. Yes, we'll have hurricanes. The sea level will rise. There are some schools that are perhaps located along our coastlines. Schools need to be put through varying scenarios that represent the worst of what is possible. Now, we experienced a pandemic, we experienced a hurricane, and one of the panelists started to ask some very critical questions. How are we going to prepare for, I remember in 2023, when we experienced the earthquake. Anybody remember that earthquake? That was like a 5 point something. Now, Jamaica is due for another 7 magnitude earthquake. What will schools do? How do we anticipate the communication going forward? Now, I've listened to the solutions that would have been put forward by a number of the students on the panel, and I must again commend them for the coordination, the innovation, and I would love to stand here and say to you that let us, because at first, I literally wrote it down. I said, all right, it sounds good. Let us see how best we can write that down and turn that into a blueprint so that when we experience another shock, we can implement this system again. But the truth of the matter is, we won't be able to know. We won't be able to know. We won't be able to predict what will be possible, because the way that we were able to respond to COVID-19 when it came is not the same way that we've been able to respond to Hurricane Melissa. And so stress testing, while stress testing is a measure that can be put in place in terms of in the education systems to prepare our schools for the worst of the worst, there still might be gaps. And this is what I propose going forward. So one, the students would have said that they're integral to the process, and we've seen that, and I'm wrapping up. So the students are integral to the process. Young people are innovative, they're creative, and it's one thing that I've noted about youth, is that they will act quickly. So while it is that you sit down and you wait on the administration to get through to you, you have been interacting with most of the students. You have already created groups. You've already activated your little soldiers, and you've started your projects and you started your programs to infiltrate the different communities and see how best you can support your peers. What I want for you to do in order to build your capacity, to build your own resilience, and to strengthen your interventions is to partner with, and not try to work against, but partner with the administration, one, partner with the agencies like the UCJ, the CCCJ, and many others, partner with other entities, so not just your college in terms of, so not just your school, but certainly reach out to UE, UTech, other institutions, Excelsior Community College. Reach out and see how best you can work together. And lastly, try to get involved or get the private sector some way involved. They have the resources, one. They also have the means. And I'm not talking about just reaching out for sponsorship, but I'm here representing the Environmental Solutions Limited. We've worked on millions of projects that speak to disaster preparedness and recovery planning. We have tools or the knowledge, the institutional knowledge that would be able to, that if you should reach out to us, and we're not the only ones, there's Smith Warner International, there are quite a lot of entities that are in that space. And I don't know what the next pandemic or shock will be, but whatever it is, there are people who are experienced and trained and will be able to not only give you resources in terms of give you a grant or money to fund your project, but will be able to give you some amount of capacity in terms of the knowledge and the know-how in terms of going into those communities or whatever the intervention. Again, I really cannot stand here and predict what that will be. But I just want to encourage the young people to continue to do what you've been doing. I don't know how you've done it. Honestly, I have been blown away completely. The way that you've been able to come together and coordinate with the limited resources that you have and the limited power that you hold within your organizations. I truly commend you. But I urge you all to just work together and let us see how best we can build resiliency in schools against climate change. So yes, the temperature is rising and there might be some measures that we need to put in place, but then there are so many other outliers that we have to get right. And yeah. So thank you all so much for listening to this speech. I don't think I have anything else to say. Yeah. Thank you all.
All right, let's hear it one more time for Mrs. Scott. Yes, she just came and gave us a reality check. The temperatures are rising, and somebody said, listen, it's the reality, and we do have to consider, as you said, climate change in all aspects of planning across all sectors. So at this time, I'll open the floor for 2 questions again. All right.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Scott, for your presentation. I'm very curious about stress testing. You mentioned that we are due an earthquake. And I'm sitting here thinking about my institution, the Money College, and all the other institutions. And you talked about stress testing. Could you concretize that concept for us by telling us a little bit more about that and making some suggestions as to what institutions could do in light of the fact that we are due an earthquake? Thank you.
So I'm so afraid of making suggestions, but I will try to answer. So stress testing, the concept. So we know that, for example, let us imagine that Jamaica never experienced the Category 5. Or let us imagine, this is real. We're not even through with recovering from Hurricane Melissa. It's very possible, given the fact that we're located again in the Caribbean, that we can get another Category 5 this year. Is anybody can stop that? Raise your hand if you have the power to stop that, or you know of some theory that can make this not real. So it is the fact. It is a fact, right? So one of the things that you can do as an institution is to run a scenario. Let's say we imagine that we're having another Hurricane Melissa this year. Let's say it happens in September, right when we're launching, classes are starting. What do you do? The notice has gone out. So you structure your stress testing in around the scenarios or the events that you expect to happen. So the first thing is the notice would go out, you'd see in the papers, Jamaica is expecting to experience a hurricane. Typically, they don't start with saying that it's a category 5. They start with saying that, there's a tropical depression in the area, and then it goes up and it levels up in a matter of 2 weeks, and then bam, hurricane 5, or category 5. What communication infrastructure does your institution have in place, or what mechanisms do you have in place to be able to still launch or start school in September? If the hurricane should come, is it a case where you're going to postpone the opening of school? Let's say it's a category 5. You postpone the opening of school and the category 5 hurricane lick down every single house in the neighborhood. Everybody not have no house up. And people are just responding to their immediate needs, as we would have seen what happened with Hurricane Melissa. People started to look for food, people started to look for water, people looking for somewhere that they can bathe, because there were a lot of people without running water, a lot of schools without running water, a lot of schools without electricity. What does your school have in place to be able to withstand all of that? Think of it in even as it regards to an earthquake. If we should have a 7 or a 7.1 or a 0.2, some of us already see cracks around our schools, right? Even in our house, we see 1 and 2 cracks already. If the 7 earthquake should come tomorrow, what would we do? How would you communicate? The students have said it here on the stage that to them, the most important thing is communication, and we failed them terribly at communicating with them immediately, because we didn't anticipate that we wouldn't have any signal. So what have we done since then to ensure that our communication mode does not only rely on the communication infrastructure in terms of the digital and the flow and all of that, right? So that is what I mean by stress testing. So going through the multiple levels, the multiple layers, and thinking about the cascading impacts that come with a particular disaster. So I've mentioned the fact that based on where we're located, we are an island, sea level rise. For years, we've been saying that there are islands that are disappearing. We've seen where some of our beaches, we're losing our beaches. There are some communities in Jamaica where people, they've tried everything. They're putting cocos bags with sand and trying to keep away the seawater from coming in, right? And some people, they live in very low-lying, vulnerable areas, and they every single time rainfall, them flood out, but them just don't want to move. Right? How it is that we, as a country, as a community, how can we prepare for what's to come? So they are our most vulnerable, but some of our students are still living in these communities, are still living in these kinds of conditions. Some of our schools and major infrastructure, this is what it goes through. For every single time we have the slightest change in weather or change in condition, right? So that's, yeah. In terms of suggestions, you will have to come up with those as you go through, because honestly, in order for me to really help you, I'd have to see what it is that your institution already have in place, and then we'd be able to make recommendations as to what it is that you would need to get. So you'd have to look at the resources that you have now, and if you're able to respond, if you should go through another Hurricane Melissa. Because with students and the quality of education, time is of importance, right? You can't pause the school year for 6 months. It's just too much to go through in terms of content, right? The exams are still important, and no student, anybody in here would like to stay just an extra year and delay your life for an extra year because hurricane come and the school say, boy, we have to cancel for this year, so we're going to, no? Right. So when you see, and this answers your question, students. This is why most of the lecturers were still pushing, even though they kind of, they were still pushing to try to cater to the students who were still able to attend classes, because people don't want to delay their lives. They want to graduate so they can apply for work and start living. So,
nice. Thank you so much. Do we have any other questions? I'll take one more. Okay.
Because the fact that the lecturers will have to teach. That's what the same thing I was thinking about. Nobody wants to delay. If I can leave, and especially thinking about persons of different family dynamics and support, and our financial issues and support that just want to finish and start working. So what role would you say that UCJ would have in all of this?
Thank you for that question. I'll have Dr. Henlin from the UCJ respond to that one.
Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon. Is it afternoon? Good afternoon, everyone. And it's still morning, but I do want to start out by saying, and I was going to comment earlier, that it's really heartwarming to hear the reflections and the comments from the students this morning, because one of the first things that we did after the hurricane was to reach out to the administration of all our institutions. And so we have a running document, post-Melissa update, and we do have the accreditation officers here, some of them, if you could just wave your hands, who reached out to the institutions and got the feedback from the administration. And the feedback was that we are checking on our students. Institutions in the West, in the East, we're checking on our students. And going through that document, the students were the focus. And so we realized that the care, the first point of call, students as customers and clients, yes, very important. And so we are thankful that what we're hearing today aligns with what we heard from the administration in terms of the care packages, the checking in, the communication. We want to make sure that, we are missing 40 students and we want to make sure that they are safe. So to respond to the question about the role of UCJ, quality is not just about, and we heard it earlier, it's not just about the exams, it's not just about the curriculum, it's not just about the quality of the program. But student services and student support is actually one of the criteria of quality assurance. And so in ordinary times, we do check on those services and the support being offered by institutions, but it tends to be almost like a silent engine. But in times of crisis, it moves from the back burner to the front burner. And so what we're doing here today is critical. We're hearing the student voices, we're reflecting on what we're hearing. To a certain extent, we are pausing, and that is so important because you are important. You, the students, are the reason why the institutions exist. And so as a quality assurance agency, we recognize that. And so we're not just going about business in the usual way. Yes, we're asking, how can, do you have a continuity plan? Yes, business needs to continue. But a part of that, a critical part of that, of course, the students are at the heart of it all. So yes, student support services and the focus and the support that institutions are providing to students is an important and critical part of quality.